you'll finally find a serene place within yourself, and you'll start to discover yourself, and you start to think about the things that matter. When you run like that, it's almost like you've just jumped into the water, and you're under the water, and all of these problems that you had were so significant. But once you're under the water, the only thing that matters is getting out of the water and getting some air.
Welcome to Ultrahabits. Here, we go under the hood with our guests to unpack the minutiae and to understand what processes and systems they engage or research that result in ultra-enhanced living.
Hey guys, it's RJ Senior from Ultrahabits, and it is season 2, episode 3 with Australian legend Pat Farmer. Now, Pat is a former politician, not your traditional politician, I must say. He was a disruptor of the status quo and really represented the agenda of the people. We talk a little bit about that in the show, but Pat is really known for being a badass ultra endurance athlete. The man has crossed a multitude of terrains across all 7 continents. And we talked before his 1,000 miles to light run, which he does with Dean Karnazes and a few other ultra endurance athletes, as they run to bring and shine the light on mental health issues and how relevant that conversation is through this COVID piece. And we also dive into that as well. Now, this conversation is all about willpower and increasing our capacity to do shit, the hard stuff. And how do we do that? So the conversation that we're going to leave you with is one that will help you shape your will and hopefully give you insight into how to grow it as a muscle. Anyways, we're going to leave you with Pat. And as always, please rate this podcast. If you haven't done so, go to www.ultrahabits.co, sign up. You will get some cool shit to you weekly. Anyways, we leave you in the capable hands of Pat. Peace out. Enjoy the conversation. I'm out of here. Thanks for joining us, Pat, on the Ultra Habits Show. It's been a long time chasing you around on email, and I finally got you here. So we welcome you, and we are super grateful that you're giving us your time today.
Yeah, look, it's my pleasure, and I'm sorry that I've been so hard to capture, but my priority has been with this latest run that I'm trying to set up, that I'm trying to make happen, something I'm absolutely passionate about, and that is trying to support youth mental health. And so, what happens with me is I get involved in a project, another run, and then I just immerse myself 100% in that and try and block a whole lot of other stuff out. So I apologize for that. I know this is very much a part of what I'm trying to do as well, and that is getting the message out to as many people as possible about ultra habits.
You are typically Australian in the sense you come across as the quiet achiever. It's always interesting when I'm talking to my American counterparts. I'm American, obviously, and we do love our self-promotion, and you do have a very quiet way about you.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, look,
I just think that's the Australian way.
I'm really grateful you're here.
Yeah, I think in Australia we have, of course, we have this thing called tall poppy syndrome, and it goes right back to the early settlers, where if you talked yourself up, if you promoted yourself too much, the crowds would drag you back down again. They didn't want you to be anything that they couldn't aspire to. Which I actually love the American system, where we admire people that achieve great things and are very successful. I admire that, and they talk it up a lot in the States. In Australia, we're very bashful and very quiet about our achievements, and for a lot of reasons, our achievements aren't known to the rest of the world as a result of that. It's just the way we are. It's just the way it is. But yeah, I can see advantages to both.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I've been across the ultra community for a while, and I actually never heard of you. It took a conversation with Charlie Engel, who obviously was supposed to be with you guys on the run, to really understand and learn about who the hell you are. Now I found out that you actually live in the same neck of the woods as I do. So
Yeah, well,
So can you maybe just go into what you guys are doing?
yeah, well. First of all, I'll just say one thing about Charlie. Poor Charlie's going through a very difficult time right at this point in time. His wife is very, very sick with cancer, and so he's by her side. He was supposed to be with us on this journey, which was a run from Broken Hill to Byron Bay, 1,000 miles, 1,000 miles, 100 miles a day, 160 kilometers per day, every single day, running relay from Broken Hill through to Byron Bay. That in itself was a morphed event. Originally, it was supposed to be across the whole of Australia, which is what Charlie and I do best anyway, go across whole countries. And it was going to be from Broome in Western Australia through to Byron Bay, so right on the west coast of Australia through to the east coast of Australia, approximately 5,000 kilometres. And we were going to come down through the red centre of Australia, down through Alice Springs and continue on. But then when COVID really took a hold of the nation and the state premiers started shutting off borders, I thought it was best to mitigate the problems by consolidating everything in one state so that I didn't have to deal with multiple state border closures. And so ever since then, it has been a moving feast of changing event venues, just basically being fluid on the whole situation so that we can at least get an event up. And unfortunately, as I mentioned, Charlie had to pull out. I understand that totally. A fellow by the name of Shan Riggs took Charlie's place. So Shan is a great ultra runner a great runner from the US, and a great guy to boot as well. So he's taken over that place. The other three Americans, of course, are Dean Carnesi. Then there is Katie Visco. Katie's famous for having run from Darwin to Adelaide just a couple of years ago, prior to COVID kicking in. So she was keen to get back to Australia. She made a short documentary about that. And then the other one is Samantha Pruitt. Samantha Pruitt promotes herself very well. She has her own ultra page, and she does a lot of ultra running in the Western states. So Sam's out here as well. And they're all in quarantine at this point in time at Sydney Hotel. They finish early next week. They're quarantining of a 2-week period, which is mandatory in Australia for anyone that comes in from outside.
Yeah, it's you guys are doing it for a cause too, correct?
Not just a cause. Look, as you may have researched, all of the runs I've done since the old Sydney to Melbourne races, which were made famous by Cliff Young with the Westfield Run, one of the biggest ultras in the world back in its day, back in the late 1980s. All of the runs since then that I've done, whether it be the race across America for from California to New York, whether it was the run around the whole of Australia for our Centenary of Federation, whether it was from the top of Australia to the bottom of Australia for Diabetes Australia, whether it was the run from North Pole to South Pole for the International Red Cross, or length of Vietnam for International Red Cross, or Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, etc., whether it was any of those, I've always looked for an altruistic cause. I've always looked for something beyond my own self-recognition to do those events. And in this case, it's for youth mental health. And I chose youth mental health, in particular the organisation called Reach Out, because young people don't like to talk about their problems. I mean, a lot of people don't. But in the old days, we would pick up a phone, we'd speak to Lifeline, and we would say, look, I'm about to jump off a cliff. I've got nothing else to live for and I need your help, or I need someone to talk to. And then they talk them through the situation and talk them down. Young people don't do that. Young people will send text messages prolifically. They don't like to hear their own voice. They don't like they find it easier to string the words together through a text or through an email than they do through the verbal way. And so for that reason, Reach Out is very, very successful in this field. They're doing incredible work and they're supporting young people, and we're trying to support their work. So the youth suicide rate in Australia has jumped astronomically over the last 2 years because of COVID, and I dare say throughout the world. particularly in Australia. If you could imagine, a whole lot of young people, they were struggling enough with their school studies in year 11 and 12, which is their high school years. And then they come to the final years of their schooling, and they're looking forward to going to university. And then all of a sudden there's these interruptions. They can't go to school. They have to stay at home. They can't do the exams on time. A whole lot of things have interrupted that. So it's hard enough as it is. Then they've had to compete with that. And then they finally get out into the workforce, and they might get their first job to try and help them through a university course, which they haven't been able to start yet. And then all of a sudden the whole catering industry is shut down. So there's no waiter jobs, no waitress jobs, there's no bar jobs, there's no entertainment jobs. And so all of those jobs that people get as part-time positions normally are gone. And they're sitting at home, they're wondering what's it all about and whether they even do have a future. And it's incredibly depressing for those people. And so from there came 1,000 miles to light, trying to shine a light, trying to show them that there is some light out of this tunnel, that we all go through dark times in our life. It's a matter of pushing on regardless and trying to find something positive to aim towards. And that is and that's symbolic of this run and symbolic of the times that we live in.
Well, one thing we can do during COVID is run.
Yeah.
And I want to know how you feel ultra running in particular can impact mental health, running far.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, there's one moment I'll never forget in my life. I was doing a run in the Middle East. I did Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and Palestine. And as I was going through those places, I remember in the Palestinian territories, as I went through there, the Palestinian Olympic team, or parts of different Olympians, came out to run with me. And that in itself is a bit of a funny scenario, because a lot of them just simply never get to the Olympics under that banner. But nevertheless, they were in the occupied territories, and they came out to run with me. And this one girl was running along with me, and she was so happy to run with me. And she said, I feel free. I feel free. And it was a freedom that I had taken for granted and didn't realize. Just the ability to be able to run, to be able to breathe fresh air and without restriction. And it was then that I recognized just how fortunate I am and what I truly get out of running. And it is that sense of freedom, freedom from within to out, because you can be in a confined and enclosed space, and so long as you feel free, you are free. And when you start to examine yourself best and you feel that sense of freedom, it's liberating and it's exhilarating, and it helps you to achieve great things. And in that moment, that young girl felt that she was achieving something great, although for many people in the Western world, they would see it as being such a minor thing because they take it for granted. So, without a doubt, that's what I get out of ultra running. And the opportunity to be grateful for every single day the sun comes up, the opportunity to travel to vast lands and different lands all over the place, and not necessarily the best hotels in the world or the most prestigious places, but to be able to see how other people live. I've been down through Panama, the Central America, places where when the sun goes down, there is no electricity in the homes. And so they can't sit up and read a book or watch a TV show. Places where they have a dirt floor, many places I've been to where they have dirt floors rather than tiles on their floors or carpet or central heating, etc., etc. And yet the people are happy and they get on with their lives. And for that, I come back to where I live and I feel so much more fortunate. And I just try and embrace what I've got and try and do the best with what I've got. And that's what I get out of ultra running.
That's extraordinary. And I really want to touch on your toughness. I mean, you're known as someone that is extremely tough and has staying power. Now, is this something that you were kind of born with or something that you developed over time?
No, it's definitely something I developed over time. With the old Sydney to Melbourne races in the 80s, I was always the youngest, even with the run across America that I did from California to New York. I was always the youngest in those races in those days, and I learnt a lot from the older runners. One of the things I learnt is that as you get older, you build up more stamina. There's no two ways about that. I think life itself supports you in that, but also your ability to deal with less sleep than you would normally when you're younger. That, excuse me, that helps enormously. So you've got more waking hours basically to get the job done. The second thing is you build up toughness and resilience through breaking through barrier after barrier after barrier. I mean, we all know the marathon runner, and they talk about how they hit this wall. Now, at that point in time, you either push through the wall and you get a second wind, a second breath, and you feel fresh again, and you can push on and finish the distance done, which normally happens around the 30, 32, 35K mark of a 42K run. For ultra runners, it happens much later, but it always happens in every race. But or you quit at that point in time. Now, if you quit at that point in time, when you get to the starter's line of the next race, not only have you got that playing in your mind, that failure from the event before, but also you don't know what's on the other side of that wall. Once you push through it, you realize that you're capable of something greater than what you were prior to that. And every single time you come to a race and you push through a new barrier, a new wall, it may be through a lack of nutrition, it may be through extreme heat conditions or extreme cold, it may be through a lack of hydration, it may be through just physical fatigue, or it could be for a whole raft of reasons. But every time you push beyond that, you get stronger within yourself. And I today am the sum total of Patrick Farmer, who was the little boy that pushed beyond those limits from start all the way through to where I am in my life now. And that sum total makes me the tough person that I am now. Not exactly the smart person that I am now, but the tough person that I am now. And I say that because I keep doing the same things over and over again. In a lot of cases, I even keep making the same mistakes. But I know that even when I make a mistake, I can find something beyond that to dig deep into and to be able to push beyond it.
Yeah, that's so well said. I think that we build resilience and toughness through proving and providing illustrative examples to ourselves that we have gotten through something like this or tougher before. And it's something that we can't borrow from other people. We can't buy other people's experiences. We need to actually experience it ourselves, right?
Absolutely. It's that sense of self-confidence. You'll see it every single time. Somebody stands up to the side of a swimming pool. If they've never swum before in their life, they're nervous about it, and they're not sure whether they're going to survive or whether they're going to drown. When somebody's already been in that pool before, they get to the sideline and they're just about to jump in there. They're going to go through. They know it might be a little bit chilly. They know it might be a little bit rough in the waters. They know that they might struggle, but they know that they can get through it and get to the other side because they've done it before. And it's just that resilience through experience. And this is why you have to live it. You know, you can read all the books in the world. You can talk about all the things in the world. But you actually have to get out there and you have to experience it and build the self-confidence within yourself to move beyond wherever you are in that point in time, in every aspect of your life,
I think that there's this point in time when people are going through their self-discovery or personal development journey that they put down the 1,000 books and they realize the books are all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And they just need to get out there and do it.
Yeah,
right?
It's so true. If you listen to myself, you listen to Charlie, listen to some of the great sportsmen and women in this world in every field. It doesn't matter whether it's boxing, whether it's swimming, whether it's running, whether it's this, whether it's that. The underlying message is very similar, and that's because we're all simple human beings. We breathe air, we take in food, we take in water, and we survive. But in order to survive, we need to have purpose in our life. We need to have somewhere to go to. When people lose purpose in their life, they just curl up in a ball on the side of the road beside a building, and they're just waiting to die. And we've all seen those homeless people on the side of the road. We've all seen people like that. The alternative to that is that you actually believe in what tomorrow could bring for you. Not necessarily today. Today can be terrible, but you believe that there is a better tomorrow. And it's that belief that helps us survive as humans and look to the future through very, very difficult, tough times, whether it be times of war, whether it be times of famine, whether it be times of disease, no matter what. It's that belief that the sun will come up tomorrow and there is a better day ahead, and that I have a plan in my head of what that better day is going to look like. And it's that visualization. For runners, it's what's over the next hill and visualizing that, or visualizing the finish line and seeing the success of that moment. For everyday people, it may be getting the dream job, or getting the job, finding the person that's the love of their life, or getting the house, the boat, the whatever it is that they're after. But we all need to dream. We all need to have goals. And once you take that away, you break the spirit. And once you've broken your spirit, we're good for nothing.
Just with that, given some people have lost their work and their jobs and their careers through COVID, and a lot of people are identified with their worth via their job or their career, what would you say to those that are looking for purpose, that have lost their jobs? Like, how can they spark or re-engage that passion?
In a word, run. In a word, run. Go out there and run until it's hard to breathe, until you hurt a bit, and then keep running. And then when you do that, then you'll finally find a serene place within yourself, and you'll start to discover yourself, and you start to think about the things that matter. When you run like that, it's almost like you've just jumped into the water, and you're under the water, and all of these problems that you had were so significant. But once you're under the water, the only thing that matters is getting out of the water and getting some air. And so all of the other stuff fades away. All of the things about, do I have a job? Don't I have a job? Do I have a house? Don't I have a house? Do I have this? Do I have that? It fades away, and you come back to the basics. And the basics is, I need oxygen into my lungs, and then I'll worry about everything else after that. When you run, same thing happens. So get out there and run. Hurt a little bit physically, because they're hurting on the inside mentally. They're hurting spiritually. And they need to hurt physically so that they can justify that hurt. And then they've got a place of something that they can put their finger on and cure. But you can't necessarily put your finger on the spiritual hurt or the mental drain that you're experiencing. So just run with me, become part of this event that I'm doing. You know, I'm having a virtual run that will coincide with the run that I'm doing, the 1,000 miles to light. So look, it's going to morph before I start this event. It's going to morph more. And that's because of COVID. That's because of restrictions. But I don't care if I have to be on a pogo stick and around a 4 meter grass area and just move from corner to corner for 1,000 miles worth of distance. I'm going to get something done. And the reason why I'm going to get something done is because I'm obligated to the American athletes that I've brought out here that are superbly going through the sacrifices of lockdown to be able to be part of this and to inspire people with mental health problems. And number two, because there is a virtual run that's going to coincide with this event through Running Heroes, and everyone can find that through either 1000milestolight.com or runningheroes.com. And they can sign up to that and do something in their own backyard and run in camaraderie with us for mental health.
You just touched on an extremely good point, and something I wanted to talk to you about: your tendency to create public events aligned with great causes. How does that level of accountability drive your level of sense of responsibility to finish things?
Well, I realized a long time ago that you can have a whole lot of plans in your heart, and unless you express those plans, they ain't going nowhere. If you announce to the world that you're going to do something, then you're hit with the realization that, wow, everybody's watching me now. I better actually do this. And then you've got pressure on yourself. So I'm continuously putting pressure on myself by being a public figure and by going out there and by doing what I have to do and what I say I will do. And the one reason why I still get sponsorship, the one reason why I'm able to travel all over the world and do the things that I have done in some of the most remote and in some cases crazy places like the Darien Jungle, the North Pole, the South Pole, deserts of the world and everything else in between, is because people have now come to the realization that if Pat tells you he's going to do something, he'll actually do it. As unusual and as many difficulties that there are thrown in the way, somehow, some way, he will do it. So I want to back this guy because I know I'm going to get a result. I'm not sure what the result is, but I know that it's going to happen and I'm going to get a result. And that's, people want that certainty, they want that surety. And if they find somebody that they can follow, that they can believe in like that, like I'm always telling my kids, I have two children, Brooke and Dylan. They're grown up now, but they're still my little kids in my eyes. I'm always telling them the world is looking for leaders. They're looking for someone to follow. Everyone is looking for someone to follow, somebody who believes with absolute certainty and surety in their mission in this life. Because we all doubt ourselves from time to time, and we're looking for somebody that is so certain that they believe in something that I want to be like them. I want to have that certainty in my own life. And so they will cling on to you and they'll follow you. Let me give you an example. Everybody in the ultra world, everybody in the running world has seen Forrest Gump, the movie, right? There's a section in that film which I can identify with where he's running across America and somebody says, why are you doing this? I'm just doing it because I wanted to go for a run. And so they want to discover why he's doing it. So they run with him. And the numbers keep swelling and swelling and swelling. That's exactly what I'm talking about. People are not sure why they're following somebody, but they want to know why, and they want someone to follow. We're all looking for true leadership in this world, and there's a void there, especially at this moment in time.
How have you seen that phenomena of people looking for leadership unfold within the political and business arena?
Look, let me be totally honest with you. I figure it's the only way I ever can be in these things. I spent some time, 9 years as a federal politician. I came into politics completely out of the blue. I'd finished doing the run around Australia for our Centenary of Federation, linking together all our states and territories and trying to show all Australians that we are one country, Australia. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so upset these days, because I'm seeing this division. I'm seeing us being torn apart as communities, and it's not the Australian way. The Australian way is unity. The Australian way is we're Australians. I never go overseas and say, I grew up in Granville. Even though I grew up in Granville, I go, I'm Australian. And then when people drill down, they can find out more about me. But I'm Australian first and foremost, and that's what we need to get back to. Now, what happened was I did that run, and the Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, was so impressed with the unity that I created through that run and the vision for the future around federation that he asked me, would I consider going into politics? And I have this simple philosophy, and I hadn't considered it before that point, but my simple philosophy is opportunities come along in our life. We either take them or we live on regret. Now, most of the time, we don't know if something's an opportunity, but I would much rather try something and realize it's not where I wanted to go than to have the regret of always looking back saying, maybe I should have done that because maybe that's where my destiny lay. So for that reason, I thought I'll give it a shot. If it's meant to be, I'll get elected. Well, I got elected and I spent 9 years in that position. While I was there, I worked tirelessly not to be a grandstander down in Parliament House in Canberra, where all the papers would report on every speech I made and how eloquently I sounded and how well I looked in a nice three-piece suit. What I concentrated on was I was given this amount of power, and I used that power to try and get things done for the people in the area where I grew up in, which was Western Sydney, which was lacking a lot of infrastructure, a lot of support, a lot of finances. Consequently, I got a new medical school built out there at the university, which they hadn't even thought about or hadn't had on their agenda. I'd gotten roads built. I'd gotten new private hospitals built. So much stuff done. More than $1 billion worth of infrastructure built. But the reason why I mention that is not to talk about how good I was, but just to say I never stopped being the person that I was, and that was a grassroots person who understood the issues. What happens and what I've observed, sadly, with a lot of politicians and a lot of people in general in different fields, is they'll go into something because of the noblest of reasons. And then after a while, they become that person, this new person. And with politicians, they get so used to people calling them sir or ma'am or bowing to them or opening the doors for them and harping on every word that comes out of their mouth, they start to believe this is who they are, this is their identity. And then what happens is after that, they compromise their values to stay in that position because this is who they are in their own mind now. And so then when they start to compromise their values, they lose who they were. They are what everybody perceives as being a typical politician, and they've lost their way. And that's why ordinary Australians or ordinary people in the world become so disillusioned with their leaders, because they've lost their way. They've lost their way, and they need to step outside their bubble and have a look back in. And often it's not until you get out of politics and you realize what matters to ordinary people again, that you realize that you were in that bubble. But it happens to everybody. It happens to a lot of famous people in show business. It happens to a lot of very, very successful athletes that are financially, all of a sudden, they've gone from poverty to being incredibly wealthy. I see it happen with the footballers and the cricketers all the time. And they change and they'll do anything to hang on to that, and they lose what this life's really all about. And you know as well as I've done, we see so many very, very wealthy people and they realize after they've got all this wealth that they're not happy because they've lost what life's really all about.
No, that's so well said. People go in with good intentions and start to drink their own Kool-Aid.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting because we're moving to Victoria, and, I've got kids and we're really worried about getting stuck at the border. We won't have an address in New South Wales. We're moving to Victoria next week. And it really dawned on me the lack of federal influence in this country. And It seems like a pissing contest now between the premiers. And we're really worried we're going to get stuck at the border with nowhere to go. So I take on board what you're saying. It's quite relevant. And it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, it's almost like divide and conquer, which is sad because, like, a lot of these politicians are good people, but they've just sort of gotten power hungry, and anyway, look, the Centenary of Federation. A couple of the points I was pushing through with all of that was I was linking together all these states and territories with one man's single footsteps, and the message was if one man can do this by just putting one foot in front of the other, imagine what we could all do if we worked together as one nation. And it was about reflecting on the last 100 years of our history, realizing the mistakes that we'd made to the Aboriginal people and learning from those mistakes, festering up to it, acknowledging it, and then moving forward together as one, as all Australians. It was also about, I would often speak about, how lucky are we? We've got all these states and territories that come together as one nation, and we're not we don't have different currencies like they do in Europe. We don't have different languages. We all acknowledge each other, and we're all under one umbrella. It's so much easier to do business this way, so much easier to work this way. But that's the federated model. But the states try and hang on to and retain this power. And I understand the sense of identity. It's a beautiful thing to see state origin happening and the states versing each other, or states versing each other in athletic events or with anything. But at the end of the day, it's important that we come together and acknowledge that we're all one people. We're all Australians. And if we did that on a global scale, imagine what a world that we would have, instead of segregating us, but people in positions of power retain that power by having those divisions. And I'm really getting off track now, but these are the things
I think it's relevant.
Yeah, well, these are the things I think about when I run. This is why I run. Like I'm a complex person. I don't just run, but I think. And the running and the thinking are both one and the same.
I understand that. So I am super spewing, because I was going to go to Byron Bay and interview yourself and Charlie and Dean. That's what I was talking to Charlie about. My mother-in-law lives out there. And I'm also spewing that I didn't know that you're actually living in the same part of the country that I do in New South Wales. So where do you run locally here, just as a matter of interest?
Well, there's some amazing trails through Budai National Park on the Central Coast. There is some fantastic trails all through there, all around the Central Coast. There are some amazing trails. Of course, not too far away where I'm isolating at the moment here in Newcastle, I've got the soft sand on the northern side of Newcastle Harbour that stretches all the way up to Port Stephens. So you talk about sand dunes. I cut my teeth on the sand dunes of Cronulla in the early days when there was significant sand dunes there. I used to run there for 8 to 10 hours a day in preparation for the run across the Simpson Desert, where I went out and broke Ron Grant's record racing across the Simpson Desert, and also to prepare for other races throughout across America and other parts of the world. So I love running in soft sand. I love the isolation and the difficulty of those sorts of regions, but also some of those country trails and mountain trails. I love trail running. I was part of a team which was 2 Americans, one Australian, myself, and one Japanese runner that took on the Gurkhas and won the 100-kilometer race in Hong Kong, the Trail Walker, which is a famous race, and that's where Trail Walker originated from. The Gurkhas had won it 14 years in a row. We were put together as an international team under the banner of Moonbat, a Japanese company, to go over there and to win that race, and we did. But it was a great run, a very tough run through the mountains of the New Territories in Hong Kong and the mainland.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. So 2 things there. I lived in Cronulla and I used to run the sand dunes in 2012. I still have an apartment there. It's nowhere near the height I think it used to be. In fact, I was there when someone passed away. Someone was running it that shouldn't have probably been running it as hard as he was, and he passed away. The second part of that is I find the Great Northern Walk is my favorite trail.
Yeah.
And I'm actually running Conjiwoy tomorrow. So So look, we do run some of the same trails. There you go.
Yeah, and I think it's these familiarities that we find with runners all over the world. Just it's a love and a passion, but it's primal. There's nothing to. You don't need a motorbike underneath you. You don't need a fast car. All you need is a pair of shoes, and in some cases you don't even need that. You just need to put one foot in front of the other and get out there, and you can relate to the other people doing the same. I want to get back to the days where you pass a runner and the other runners coming the other way, and you still wave to them, you still say hello, and that sort of thing. I'm seeing in Sydney, I'm seeing in Australia at the moment, people are not saying g'day to each other as often as they used to. People are not as friendly as they were. We're all scared of catching something or saying something out of line, and we've got to get back to what Australia is famous for, and that is its friendliness.
It's well said, Pat. I mean, even through this video, I can feel your leadership and just your impact of what type of man you would be to be around, not only at work or politics, but running with. So that's quite extraordinary. So, what would you say to the individual out there that's looking to increase their capacity with resilience, build their willpower? How would you recommend they do that?
I say this: none of us know what day we're going to fall off the perch or what day we're going to close our eyes and never open them again. And so I mention that first and foremost because it doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are. The only thing that matters is that you start. You start. So don't say, I would have done this, but I'm too old for it now, or I'm a bit old to take up running now, or whatever. All you have to do is start. And then what it is it's you are the future person of who you are today. So you are the sum total of the actions that you take today. So you take some action, you put one foot in front of the other, and tomorrow you build on it, and you build on it the day after, and you build on it the day after. And after a month or so, you look back and you realize you're a better person than what you were when you first started. After a year, you look back and you realize that you're a new person. And after 2 years or 5 years, you're content with the life that you have, and it's become a way of life for you. So it's a whole mathematical theory. You know, we are the sum total of everything that we have done before this moment, and we will be the sum total of everything that we do from this moment on into our own future. And we've just got to keep reminding ourselves of that. But you don't get any total unless you actually start.
I think we'll leave it there, Pat. Before we go, where can our audience find you, and where can they learn more about the run?
Well, I'm out there, patfarmer.com, so you can jump onto my website. The place I'm steering everybody to at the moment is our website for the run, which is 1,000 miles to light. And rest assured, in some way, this event will go ahead and we will complete 1,000 miles, however we do it, in line with the restrictions that COVID is placing on us. But we will do it. So just go to 1000milestolight.com, and through there you can click on to find out all about Reach Out, the wonderful organization that they do, that they are, and the support that they give to youth in this country for mental health issues, and you can support them. Or you can also click and go across to the Running Heroes page and become part of the virtual run and stay in contact with not only myself, but the other 3 Australian runners and the 4 American runners, and ask us any questions that you want about anything to do with running, life in general, or the 1,000-mile race while it's actually unfolding.
Thank you so much for your time, Pat.
My pleasure.